Right, hello, and welcome to the episode I think you've all been waiting for, the podcast on smoking cannabis whilst pregnant or breastfeeding. Sorry, I just said pregnant. Anyway. First of all, I want to say sorry. This is probably going to be my most watched podcast, and you're all going to have to watch it while I'm wearing unironed clothes. But it's hot. I needed an outfit change, and this is all I had. So I'm sorry. Anyway, this episode, well, I'm hoping you're all going to enjoy it. I have taken some show notes because I would like to try and get everything in. So let's get into it. Now, I wanted to start this podcast by saying this. I shouldn't actually have to say any of the following, right? Because cannabis is and will continue to be a fantastically healing plant, right? It is simply just a herb. I don't know, for something that is naturally growing and being demonized for financial gain and nothing else, it's absolutely horrible that you even have to do these things and ask these questions. But yeah, anyway, so that's where I stand on this. But we're going to continue. Now, obviously that's the question I get the most, funnily enough, over the years. I get a lot of people messaging me saying, Tamara, did you smoke cannabis whilst pregnant? And the answer is yes. I have 5 children, right? And I have smoked cannabis and cigarettes whilst pregnant with all of them. And I have, if you know me, you know I've been smoking weed since I was 13. And I have been smoking every day, and I mean every single day, since I was 15, right? Now, I initially fell in love with the plant because I didn't sleep as a child. I think I've said this before, but I was a complete insomniac. I would just lie awake pretty much all of the night, and it was horrible. And the first night I smoked cannabis, I went home and slept. I slept like a fucking baby, and I never forget that day. Like, that day has stuck with me forever and has been the reason I have continued to smoke. Now, in retrospect, I think I have probably been self-medicating the whole time, but that's probably a podcast for another day. But whatever it is, I have basically been smoking cannabis every single day since I was 15. Now, I'm not going to say it's like the healthiest endeavor, but for me personally, cannabis has saved my life. All right, there's been many days when I have been very, just say suicidal, quite frankly, just really not okay, not wanting to exist. And I don't know, every single day I've smoked cannabis, I've got over that feeling and just replaced it with it's okay. Kill yourself, don't worry, sort of thing, right? So for me, weed has been the thing that has made life more bearable, right? And wrongly or rightly, it's been in my life for a very long time. So written here, one day I'll tell the story of how I ended up with 5 kids alone, but it's not today. But I will tell that story one day, because I guess that's probably a big part of why I medicate every day. But I've had 5 children, and my first pregnancy, obviously I wanted to do it in the right way, or what I deemed to be the right way, and do it the best way. And I wanted to not smoke, and I don't know, I was in a right fucking state because I couldn't stop smoking. Now, I remember seeing this nurse that said to me very quietly, because I was in a state, she said to me very quietly, kind of off the record, she said, it would be better for you to smoke than the stress you are putting yourself through trying to not smoke. She said, stress is the ultimate killer. That's the thing that affects the baby the most. Do what you need to do to stay stress-free, right? And I've obviously taken that and flipping run with it. Now, Rocco was born fit and healthy. He weighed 6'6" when he was born, and I will not forget that, because I literally thought he was the fucking devil. But he was very healthy and happy, and he walked when he was like 7.5 months, right? He was a super intelligent child. I literally sent him into school tying his laces and drawing symmetrically. Like, he was an amazing child, and I'd say, if anything, the school has been what's dumbed him down, okay? Now, I have somehow ended up in stressful situations with all of my pregnancies, but I think because Rocco had been okay, I kind of took that as a signal that the rest of them would be okay. So I had continued to smoke throughout all my pregnancies. Now, I guess the question is, like, do I regret this? Honestly, I don't. There is only one thing I regret, and this is not a very nice story, but I am going to be open and honest, like I always am. When I fell pregnant with Amelia, who was my second child, things were really bad with her dad. His dad had just died. He was telling me he didn't want to have a baby, and I was like, fuck, I'm going to be on my own with my second child now. And having done it already with Rocco, I was like, I am definitely not doing that again. And I had decided I was having an abortion. The abortion was booked in, and one night I did some MDMA, and that I regret. Now, I'm not going to say Amelia's got special needs like that, but I've got a friend's mum who years ago, she said to me, it's all right to smoke all that weed when you're pregnant. She was like, don't do the ecstasy. I should have fucking listened. There's nothing actually wrong with Amelia, but she is the one who is, I don't know, she's very like me, if anything, a little bit all over the place and whatever, but I do wonder if that is because I did that when I was pregnant. And like I said, I was booked in for an abortion. Don't even know if I should tell that story now, how Amelia didn't end up getting aborted, but she obviously didn't. And yeah, that is one thing I have lived to regret. I will tell you that story quickly, actually, because that's a weird thing to say and then not follow it up with the story. But obviously I was not okay. I didn't want to have another child, and I was convinced that the abortion was the answer. So I'd gone to the clinic, and I'd got down to the table bit, right, where they numb you up and they're going to do the thing, and I was in such a fucking state. And I remember they gave me the anaesthetic, and before that kicked in, I was just sobbing. And I just remember the last thing, God, I'm going to cry. I just remember the last thing that man said. He was like, you don't want this? He's like, I'm not doing it. And he refused to do it. And God, should have probably saved this story for another time. I'm due on my period, by the way. I'm okay. I'm just a little bit emotional. But yeah, he was just like, you don't want this. I'm not doing it. And he refused to do it and set me back up. And when I woke up, I was obviously still pregnant, and then in even more of a state, because obviously I knew I didn't want to have the baby, but I didn't not want to have the baby. I always say, listen, I don't have a problem with abortion. Life is hard. But I think when you have a child, to then have an abortion, you very much know what is at stake, right? And I think, I don't know, I was doing that because I didn't want to be alone, and I didn't want to have to just deal with all of that stress alone again, I guess. And so that was my, but like I said, that never happened. But because I thought that was going to happen, I'd done the MDMA, and honestly, not like I lived to regret it like that. I mean, Amelia, if you know her, you know she's fucking fine, but it is something I will always wonder, like, is that the reason? Because people always say, oh, she's autistic, she's ADHD, they're just testing her for dyslexia now in school. And I mean, God, everyone's fucking bloody got ADHD and autism these days, haven't they? But yeah, that is something I do wonder if that was a bit of my fault. So yeah, I don't regret the cannabis at all, and I'll get into more of why. But anyway, so I use cannabis throughout my pregnancies, and actually what I will say is one of the biggest things, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I can't stop smoking sort of thing. Cannabis was actually keeping me alive. When I fell pregnant with Rocco, I very quickly got sick, like the morning sickness. That's actually how I know I'm always pregnant, because I get diabolically ill, like ridiculously ill. The morning sickness was so bad, like I was in hospital on a drip. And the only thing that would stop me from feeling sick was if I'd smoke a few pulls on a spliff, and then the sickness would simmer down and I'd be able to eat like an apple or a bit of toast or something. And that's how my whole pregnancy, from literally, I was throwing up with Rocco till in labour. I threw up from the beginning till when I fucking was in labour. It did not stop. It was a very, very bad time of my life. Very bad time. Funny, I did it 4 more times really. But yeah, anyway, so that, I feel like the smoking just really helped, and it was supporting me more than anything. So I don't know. Now, I guess the next question on everybody's lips is, has this caused any problems? Because I've always been very open with my cannabis use, and because of that, I don't think anybody can tell me a damn thing. I think it's when you start to hide things and lie, it is a problem. Now, my thoughts on this has changed slightly over the years, but back when I was first having my children, I didn't care. Anybody who wanted to listen, I tell them, yeah, I smoke fucking weed and I don't care, right? Now, this had never caused an issue until I was in labour with Knight. Now, one day I'm going to do a podcast on all my pregnancies and labours, but when I was in labour with Knight, he was my 4th child, and I knew at that point how much I needed a water birth, because I'd done the previous 2. I'd done Amelia and Neo without any pain relief. It was just gas and air, a few pushes, got them out, right? So I was trying to do the same thing with Knight, and I'd booked into the birthing suite. I was supposed to be having a water birth, but when I got to hospital, they had given me this fucking transvestite lesbian fucking underage. She must have been about 20, midwife, right? And she didn't know what the fuck she was doing. Now, obviously, you can't claim to know how to do somebody's job better when it's not your job. But this is my 4th labour at this point. I know what the fuck I'm doing. So I kept saying to them, you need to get me into the water. Like, I cannot cope with the pain. I just need to be in the water. And they've got the belly monitor on me, and they're monitoring the baby. Now, she keeps saying the baby's in distress, but the baby only keeps going into distress every time I'm having a contraction. Now, I've always been quite I don't know, I hate the word spiritual, but I don't know, whatever. I knew the baby wasn't in distress. I knew the baby was just simply reacting to the fact of my distress every time I was having a contraction. So I was literally having a contraction, and then the heart thing on the monitor for the baby was spiking. So this woman was she was making me feel like the baby was going to die. That's what she was doing. She was just like, we've got to get this out quick. You can't get in the water. This is dangerous, blah, blah, blah. The baby's in distress. And I'm like, it was so awful. And in amongst all of that, in a flash second, because she kept saying the baby's in distress, there's something wrong with the baby, we've got to get the baby out. I just went, oh my God, is this because I smoked a spliff a few hours ago? And that was it. The world turned fucking upside down. I must have given birth about 30 minutes after that. And then another nurse has come in, and she was just like, look, I don't know what you said when you were in labour, but we now have to action X, Y, Z. The social services are going to be called, blah, blah, blah. We need to do drug tests on the baby. And I was like, okay. Anyway, these times, all of the labours previously to that, they do this thing where you go and have the baby and basically they kick you out a few hours later. I've been fine with that because you just want to get home. Now, I've just had this baby and I just wanted to get out of fucking hospital and get home. And they're telling me I had to stay there and have this bloody this piss. They wanted the baby to piss in this bag, have the test, and then they would let me go. I just went fucking mental. I was like, no. I remember, I'll never forget this. I picked up the fucking baby. There was a line of fucking nurses and I just bashed through them all because, you know, they've got the doors locked. Like all the nurses stand in front of the doors are locked, so I can't get out. I'll never forget this day because it was like, you know, like when the heavens open or something magical happens, like you hear the angels singing, like it was one of them moments. I'm trying to fucking escape. My stepmom walks around the corner and you know the doors just activate from the other side automatically. So they swung open, that was it. I've just run through the doors and then I'm the other side with the baby. I'm like, what the fuck are you going to do? I'm gone. Anyway, so I was going mental. I said to my stepmom, I was like, just take me home. Like, I just needed to get home, have a fucking bath, like have a cup of tea. You know, if you've had a baby, you know you just want to get home, right? Hospital's not the best place to be, I don't think anyway. So if you're all right and healthy and everything's okay, just get home. So I fought these people basically, gone out, gone home, and then that night the social services were calling. They called my stepmom and they was like, if she does not bring this baby back to the hospital, we're coming to take the baby. And that's it. I was like, I'm going on the lam. It wasn't that drastic. Thank God for my stepmom. Thank God for her, because she was such a calming voice of reason. She was just like, look, let them do the test. Yeah, everything will be okay. And I did. I agreed to go back to the hospital the next day and have the baby urine tested. And I did. And what happened? Nothing. There was not a fucking trace of anything in the urine, as I knew there wouldn't be. But yeah, they just wanted to prove that to themselves. So that I think was the only incident I've had regarding cannabis whilst in labour. And like I said, I fully blamed that on that fucking midwife who was just really didn't have a clue. Did not have a fucking clue. So, but yeah, there's been no problems. I've had a few run-ins with the social services over the years when they've like, oh, you've been reported for smoking cannabis. And I'm like, yeah, I do smoke cannabis. And fucking what? Means I don't kill myself or my children. What? And I only know, and I only feel safe doing this because I've got a really old friend who, it's hard to say this without making her sound bad. She's not a bad person. She's actually one of the best people I've ever known. But she smokes heroin, and that is due to trauma. I won't even begin to tell you what she's been through. But if you'd been through what she'd been through, you'd smoke heroin too. But she has always smoked. But she has 4 children, and she has always looked after those children. I mean, those children have got degrees. They've gone on to uni. Like, they're good fucking kids, right? And she would always have the social services in and out of her life, but they let her keep the children because she was a good mum. She had food in the fridge and she looked after her children well. So that's how I know you can literally smoke crack, yeah, and still have your children in your care as long as you've got food in the fridge and they're presenting well, which my children do. If you know my children, you know they're fucking happy, right? There's always food in the fridge and everything is good. So social services have never been able to tell me a damn thing, and they're not something I've ever feared, because I'm just like, well, what are you really going to do? Because they've never got anything to say, because I'm just like, well, if you don't want to smoke weed, like, support me. pay for us to go on holiday. Get me a fucking nanny. Get me an au pair. Do you know what I mean? And then they never want to do any of that. The last thing social services want is me in their life. Trust me. Anyway, I would say that was the only time cannabis caused me a problem. And do you know what? There's just a little bit in here I just want to add on because I forgot to just say this. But when I went into labour with Rocco, I went off, you go to the hospital and they have to check how much you're dilated and whatnot. I went to the hospital and I remember there's a West Indian nurse and she looked at my notes and she just very quietly said to me, she was like, don't smoke when you go home. She said, do not smoke when you go home. Now, what did I do? Went home and smoked. What did that do? Prolonged my fucking labour. I gave birth to Rocco 47 fucking hours after that, yeah? I wish I'd never smoked that spliff, trust me. But on the flip side of that, in later pregnancies, I remember when I was in labour with Amelia, I didn't want to go. I wasn't ready. I was literally at my mother-in-law's having Sunday dinner. I didn't want to go to the hospital. And I was like, no. So I rolled a big spliff and I smoked it. And it really gave me literally an extra 2 hours, I think, just calmed all the contractions down. And then I went to the hospital in my own time. But so, yeah, I just wanted to say that because I wouldn't regret it. But it's certainly, it will slow things down if you're at the early stages of labour. So just bear that in mind. Now, I want to talk a little bit about edibles, right? Because of obvious reasons. I don't know how this is going to sound or even how to put this in a scientific way. But for me, I know whatever you're eating and drinking is going straight to supply the baby, right? And so I always just left edibles, pregnant and breastfeeding, especially when breastfeeding, right? I've always just left the edibles, but I have just smoked. So I did know that was going to be one of the questions and I just wanted to say that. But this does now bring me on nicely to the next biggest question is, did I smoke cannabis whilst breastfeeding? Again, yes, I did. Now, again, back to the edibles thing. With your breast milk, when you're eating and drinking, especially after a feed, everything's going back in to make your breast milk, right? So bearing that in mind, I would smoke. However, I set myself parameters or whatever. I would never smoke within 20 minutes either side of a feed. Now, don't get me wrong. This is so hard to judge when, first of all, the baby's brand new and they could be cluster feeding or all sorts. Like it can be hard to judge. But as a general rule, I would always say you've just fed the baby, I would wait at least 20 minutes, right? Have my water, let my breast milk replenish and whatever. Then 20 minutes after that, I would then go and smoke. And then I would always try and make sure, but this is the harder thing to do, is not feed within 20 minutes of smoking. So if I've just smoked now, I would try and wait 15, 20 minutes before feeding the baby. Now, obviously, this is not always possible. If you've got a screaming baby needing your boob, you're just going to have to whack them on. So, but those were just like little rules I tried to follow because I felt like that made a huge difference. Now, what I will say is that is not advice. I meant to say that at the beginning. That is not advice. I'm not advising you on this. This is just me sharing my experience. But I don't know how to put this, and I've got chat to write me a little something out. Basically, your breast milk naturally, if you've never smoked a spliff a day in your life, produces endocannabinoids to help your babies. I actually thought this was to help the babies get the munchies to eat, but it's actually to help stimulate the sucking reflex, right? So whether or not you smoke cannabis, your breast milk when breastfeeding will naturally produce these endocannabinoids to help the baby with the sucking reflex, which I just find to be absolutely amazing. Now, it should be noted, they are not the same things. The endocannabinoids you produce and the THC you're smoking, not the same thing at all. But it is just really interesting that your breast milk kind of does this to mimic essentially getting the munchies so the baby can become healthier. Anyway, now there's obviously not much research on this. Now, I will say that is simply because if you can't ever find a lot of research on something, it is because the research would kill the very thing that is trying to suppress it in the first place. For instance, like if there was enough research to say that cannabis cured cancer, how would all these people sell their cancer drugs? Cancer's like the biggest business in the world. They couldn't, right? So they have to kind of, I don't know, the research is not there, and you have to understand to even conduct research costs money, all right? You need funds. And if no one is going to give someone the funds to be able to prove that all these shitty medicines are pointless, right? And that you could get a plant that you can't patent to actually save everybody. It's just, they're not going to do it. But there is one study that has been done, right? And this is probably the most important study that you can reference that has ever been done. And this was done in Jamaica. And the reason why it's important is because not only was it a study on this, but it was a study done over a long time. Like, she literally went back 5 years later and gathered more like data and stuff, and it was just really interesting what came out of this study. Now I'm just going to read you what the conclusion was, because spoiler alert, after 5 years going back to these children, studying what was the difference between the children who had come from the mothers who had smoked cannabis and the ones who hadn't, the difference was literally fuck all. And surprisingly, there was a small difference in a positive way. So like, they found the children, let me just read this to you because it's really interesting. This is taken from PubMed, right? I'll provide the link in the bio, but it says, and this is in reference to the research, it says, this research provides data on the development of 59 Jamaican children from birth to age 5 years whose mothers used marijuana during pregnancy. Approximately 1/2 of the sample used marijuana during pregnancy and were matched with non-users according to age, parity and socioeconomic status. Testing of the children was done at 1, 3 and 30 days of age, with the Brazelton neonatal behavioural assessment scales, and at age 4 and 5 years, with the McCarthy scales of children's abilities. Now, data about the child's home environment and temperament were collected from direct observations as well as from standardised questionnaires. The results, that is the important bit, the results show no significant differences in developmental testing outcomes between children of marijuana using and non-using mothers, except, and this is so interesting, at 30 days of age, when the babies of users had more favourable scores on 2 clusters of the Brazelton scale, and that was on autonomic stability and reflexes. It says the developmental scores at ages 4 and 5 were significantly correlated to certain aspects of the home environment and to regularity of basic school, which is basically just saying what's affecting the children then is actually their environment and whether or not they're going to school regularly. But that is so interesting, like, that they actually found some of the children, the ones who were doing better were the ones from the mothers who were using the cannabis, right? Anyway, I just think that was, I don't know, I just think that's a beautiful thing, to be honest with you, because like I said, not many people even know about this study, and not a lot of many people will reference it, and I think they've tried to bury it because, well, we all know what the study's saying. Anyway, I think this is probably a good time to wrap the podcast up, because, well, nature knows best, doesn't it? And it, like I started this by saying, it is a plant at the end of the day, and the fact it's been so demonized. I mean, I want to do another podcast on how cannabis basically went from being a medicine, because it used to be a medicine. It used to be something you could go and buy over the counter in the pharmacy, right? And now it's become this demonized drug, and it's so bad. But when you understand the story behind why they've demonized cannabis, and, you know, Henry Ford, you must have heard of Fords, you know, the Fiestas and stuff, the cars. He made his first car, right? Listen to this. He made his first car. The doors of the car were made from fibres from hemp. How fucking strong is that, right? Fibres from hemp were what made the car doors. And what did the car run on? Hemp oil. The things that went on around that time to suppress that, right? Because remember, this big oil, they want us using the fucking big oil that they steal. The things that went on around that was just, it's mad what they have done to cannabis over the years for their own financial gain, right? So, like I said, I shouldn't have even had to have made this podcast. It should be known to you that it's okay to smoke a plant, right? It should be known, but it's not, and it's been demonized, and it's very upsetting. And I would just like to end this by saying I probably owe my life to cannabis. I've been very open with my use of it, very open on how it's helped me, and I don't know, I see a lot of people start using cannabis products who've never used them before, and they can have anything from like Parkinson's to depression, and they see improvement, like a quick improvement. And again, we have these endocannabinoid receptors in our bodies, almost like our body has been built to receive cannabis. And I feel like a lot of people who are ill, who have never had cannabis, are suffering with a lack of it, which sounds crazy, which is why when they take it, they feel so much better. Honestly, it's a wonderful thing. But like I said, I'm going to do a podcast on that because it's a separate matter and an interesting one. But yeah, I would say if you have smoked whilst pregnant, do not beat yourself up. Do not feel bad about it. What I will say and end this note on is this: I have changed my views a little bit over the years as to how open I am with what I do. Well, clearly not, because I'm on the internet saying it, but I'm just saying with the social services, there is one word in particular you need to use if you are going to be admitting to the use of cannabis, and it is quite simply recreational. All right, if anybody asks you if you smoke cannabis, yes, I do, recreationally, okay? Because when we say recreationally, no one can't tell you a damn thing. So I'm just going to end it on that note. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. If you have any questions, my DMs are open. I mean, they're not open. I've been getting a lot of DMs lately. Thank you very much. But if you've got anything you want to ask, please just reach out. I know it's not nice being pregnant, and I know having something like this on your shoulders and everybody looking at you like you're the world's worst mother. I would just like to let you know you're definitely fucking not. All right, we're all just doing our best here. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. If you have got any questions, DM me. Any thoughts, leave a comment. I will get to as many as I can. And just, as always, thank you for listening. And I will be back next week. I don't know what with. In fact, I think I'm away next week and there might not be a podcast, but I'll be back the week after that and we'll be consistent moving forward after then. And well, yeah, I'll just see you all then. I love you so much. Thank you for listening. Have a glorious day. Mwah.